Let's look at some more ways that you can work in the timeline in Premiere Pro. In my timeline, I currently have a starting clip, and then I just have some audio interviews that I've added to the audio track. So let's say that I've decided I actually want this logo to go right in here. A great way to do that, since I already have content inside the timeline, there's a couple different ways I can do that. One, I can select tracks and move everything forward, kind of whittle them down. But an even easier way is to use the insert option in the source pane. So in the source pane, I have this logo and I want to insert it where my playhead is at the beginning. So I'll simply click insert and my clip moves in and everything else moves down. So that is a quick way to insert things into the timeline. The next technique I want to show you is overwriting, and we're going to use that next. To our source window, and I already have some in and outs marked, so it's ready to go into the timeline. I'm just going to click overwrite. So you can see that clip popped in to our timeline, overwriting on top of the audio. Next, we're going to add some other clips to the timeline. One way to make sure that your playhead is right at the end of the other clip is to hold down your shift key, and it'll get that little snapping triangle that'll snap to the end of the previous clip. So we've now added some clips to our timeline, and we can begin to look at how we can do some additional editing with these. So we've walked through the tools at the bottom of the source pane. Let's go ahead and get to know our timeline a little bit better. One of the first things I'm going to do is use my tilde key. This is right below the escape. And when I use that, whatever pane I have selected, in this case the timeline, becomes the full frame. To exit, I just use the same key. So that's one thing you can do. You can also just manually work with the timeline to kind of expand its view if you like to do that. The next thing I can do is increase the size of the clips in the timeline. To do that, and we'll start with our video track, I can double click that. I can use the plus key, that kind of extends the time, and I'm double clicking to enlarge that as well so you can see the waveforms and edit those a little more closely. Other icons to familiarize yourself in the timeline include toggling the sync lock. That ensures that all tracks are affected equally. You do want to make sure that that sync lock is enabled. You can hide tracks. Coming down to audio, you can mute tracks. You can use these icons, and we'll do that in a minute, to record a voiceover. And you can lock a track, which would prevent any changes on that particular track. Next, let's talk about some of the other tools available near the timeline. First of all, this is your selection tool, which is keyboard shortcut V. This allows you to move your clips in the timeline. If you are on your selection tool and you hover, you have a simple trim tool allowing you to trim your clips. Right below that, we have our track selects, both left and right. So what they do is select the tracks from a given point and move them. So you noticed it moved both my tracks on V1 and A2. I'm going to Command Z, go back to where we were before. Below that we have the Ripple Edit tool. What that does is changes a clip's in and out point. lengthening, shortening the clip, making the sequence longer or shorter. You want to use this when you're going to shorten your clips without affecting other clips, and you're not worried about the overall time of the clip. You can see as I move this, the other one moves down. Let's try that down here. Same thing. Next tool is a rolling edit, which changes the clip's out point and the nearby clip's in point. So they change together. You would use this when you don't want to affect the sequence length. So I'm just kind of changing the time as these two relate to each other, rather than when I was using the ripple edit and changing one or the other, lengthening or shortening. Rate stretch changes the duration of a clip and changes the speed of it to compensate. Razor tool can be used when we want to cut a clip into two different clips. The slip tool changes your in and your out point in the same direction and the same degree. And you can use this when you want to change the portion of a clip, but you don't want to affect other clips. The slide tool will change the position of a clip in the timeline without affecting the length of the clip. See, I'm just sliding this right there. But basically, I just slid it over to this position. So you would use this when you want to change when a clip starts and you don't mind adjusting its length. Pin tool will allow you to create keyframes and anchor points in your audio. So if we came down here, we can add some points along our audio, and if we wanted this to start a little bit lower and kind of ease into it, that would be that correction on the audio. The hand tool allows us to move our timeline to the right or the left, and the zoom tool will allow us to zoom in to that portion of the timeline in which we are clicking. So that is working in our timeline.